The Grow Group Practice podcast is part of the Practice of the Practice Network, a network of podcasts to help you grow, manage, and promote your business and yourself. To hear the other podcasts, like the Practice of the Practice podcast, go to practiceofthepractice.com/network. You're listening to the Grow Group Practice Podcast, a podcast focused on helping people start, grow, and scale a group practice. Each week, you'll hear topics that are relevant to group practice owners. I'm Brandon Shern, a practice owner, and I love to hear from people. Hey, welcome back, and thank you for joining me on another episode of the Grow Group Practice Podcast. Today is going to be the start of a 5-part series. I'm talking about creating freedom for your practice. Right? What does that mean? What does freedom, having a practice that is free? And actually, by extension, when your practice has freedom, you also have freedom as the owner. Okay. And this is inspired by a book I read called Making Money is Killing Your Business by Chuck Blakeman. And in this book, he details the process of taking a business from a concept all the way to maturity. Now, as practice owners, we've already got the startup. Right? The practice is already there. So we don't want to start there. Okay. But really what I want to do is in this first episode is talk about business maturity and the journey that your practice goes on or goes through, I should say. Okay. Now, the first thing that we need to talk about and really define is what does it mean to have a mature business? What is business maturity? Right. So really it's if you think about it in terms of developmental stages, if you're a parent, think about your own developmental journey. You typically go through phases. There's the infancy phase and there's the adolescence phase. And then you shift into young adulthood, middle adulthood, all of those other phases. And typically, developmentally, we say that maturation takes place really when you are about 20, 25-ish, right? Now, there's other factors that play into that, but I'm really talking about the business. Now, unlike what it takes for humans to develop, a business doesn't have to take, let me say it that way, it doesn't have to take 25 years to reach full maturation. But all businesses do go through the 3 phases: infancy, adolescence, and ultimately maturity. Now, when I say in maturity, it's not that for your business, it's not that you are no longer supporting your business. That's not really, or you're not contributing to the business. If you are a parent of adult children, you know that you are never done being a parent, right? So it's less dependent. The business is less dependent on you as the owner to be involved in the day-to-day activities, right? And that's how we as parents, we ultimately want our kids to get there, where we don't have to be involved in their day-to-day activity. Infancy is a phase where the business is completely dependent upon you. Everything to a vast extent, right? You are doing everything. You are everything. The CFO, the CMO, the CEO, the intake coordinator, you are the office manager, you're the receptionist, you are everything in those beginning stages, that infancy stage. Everything about the business is dependent upon you. And if you don't contribute, if you don't work, you're not going to have any income. When you get into adolescence, your business is a little more stable. It can stand for you to not be involved in as much, but there's still a lot of oversight that is required as the business owner. And like I said, maturity is that phase where you're not as involved in the day to day. And that gives you the ability to go and enjoy your life, so to speak. Unfortunately, many therapy practices, private practice in particular, find themselves stuck in its infancy phase. And it's not that there's not money coming in and none of that stuff. What it really means in the infancy is that the business is still dependent upon the owner to be involved in the day-to-day activities. Without that support, the business could potentially collapse, right? And that's an important distinction to make because a lot of the time we can say, oh, my business has been around for 7 years, or I've been in private practice for 7 years, and we equate the chronological age of our business to a maturation level. And that is not how business operates, right? Remember, would you want to own a business for 25 years before it fully matures? Probably not if you're like most people. Most private practice owners go into private practice for the purpose of getting some time back. But unlike the natural development of a child, of a human being, your business does not require 25 years or plus to get to the point where you don't have to be involved in the day to day activities. All right. So, one of the things that kind of keeps the practice or the therapy practice and a practice owner by extension in the infancy stage is this trap of revenue growth. What exactly do I mean by the trap of revenue growth? What I'm saying is that we get stuck on this hamster wheel, this cycle of thinking that more clients equals more freedom. And actually, more clients does not equal more freedom. Being honest, I'm going to speak for myself. The primary reason that I wanted to and did launch my own practice was to not have to take on more clients in order to have revenue come in. Now, I knew eventually, I knew in at least in the beginning stages, in the infancy stage, that I would need to be more involved and I would have to do more support, which means that I would have to see clients and have a larger caseload for the purpose of supporting the business, supporting the practice. But if we stay there, if I would have stayed there and said, okay, I need to see more clients, I find myself being bogged down, not having the freedom to do the things that I want to do, to take advantage of the time freedom that I get from being my own boss, from having my own practice. Another thing that keeps a person in a business in that infancy stage is when if you scale without systems. So scaling without systems is it can support that revenue growth trap because everything is living inside of your head as the practice owner. When you do not have a way to delegate, to outsource, I should say, then again, everything is dependent upon you as the practice owner. And the we can talk about all of the typical thoughts of, oh, I can do it best, and all of those things. Regardless of where you are, it if you don't have systems in place, it'll it'll lead to burnout and that trap, right? So now not only do you not have systems in place, you've scaled your practice and you still have to see clients because and you still have to have your hands in everything else because there's no system. And one of the easiest ways to really think about this is, what is your intake process like? If your intake process is as such that you you can't you can't delegate that out because it's impossible for you to speak to whoever is going to be handling the intakes, whoever is going to be that first touch point for clients. You don't have a process in place for them. It means that you are locked into it still, and which means you want to do it because I need to get my clinicians some people, and that it can lead you to burnout because now not only do you have your own caseload that you're carrying, but you also have this other piece as well. And so you keep yourself involved in a day to day. And that was one of the things that I had to face when I decided to scale my practice and bring on my first clinician. I had to think about, what do I need the clinician to know? And then when I brought on a intake specialist, what do the intake specialists need to know? And those are two different hats, right? Now, in my person, if I was involved in that, I could do it without blinking because I'm the one that's involved in it. But once I start delegating out, I need processes. Otherwise, the people are going to be continuously relying upon me. And again, it goes back to that dependency, the business being super dependent upon you as the person is going to drive to burnout. I want to thank Headway for sponsoring this episode. If you run a group practice, you know that accepting insurance can be overwhelming. Between credentialing, billing, and payroll, the admin side can easily take over your week. Headway was built to help you handle this, and they're the only platform designed specifically for in-network group practices. Whether you're growing your team or running an established practice, Headway makes the business side easier with faster credentialing, higher per session rates, and bi-weekly payments your team can count on. They work with therapy, psychiatric, and hybrid groups, and there are no subscription fees, just the support you need to run your practice with ease. Run your best group practice with Headway, trusted by thousands of group leaders to simplify insurance admin and reach more people through in-network care. Curious how Headway can work for you? Head to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co/Joe. Now I want to talk and switch gears a little bit about vision-driven growth. And so we talked about, what does it mean to have a mature business? We looked at this trap that revenue can have, right? So you think about just growing your revenue, your coffers, making sure there's money in the bank to cover the bills. Those are some of the things that kind of drives a person, and rightfully so. We just have to honor that when we are driven that way, it keeps us stuck in the business. And one way of thinking about that is, I don't have freedom to work on the business because I'm constantly working in the business. So when we talk about vision-driven growth, it's talking about having a business that serves your life. Right? What does it mean to have a business that serves your life and not consume it? Well, that's the maturity aspect, when you can just go and be, right? I think as a parent, all of my children are adults, which means I don't have to be involved in their day-to-day activities and guiding them daily and all of the monitoring them daily. That gives me the ability to go and travel if I want to, travel internationally if I want to, leave the house and not have to worry about whether or not the house is going to get burned down or anything like that. I have freedom to do the things that I want to do. And so it's the same thing with business. When you grow a business and you have vision for the growth, now it's not just haphazard, it's more intentional, right? So I was really intentional about growing my business. I had to I decided I wanted to have a particular type of business. I wanted to have a business where my practice was all about getting clinicians who were in their provisionally licensed stage and supporting them in the process of growing into clinicians, as well as be in a space where people in their internship and their practicum and internship, I should say, could get a taste of what it's like to be in private practice and all of the ebbs and flows of it, right? So that was my vision, and it and I was intentional about that. And some of the intentionality with that and caused me to say, okay, well, who can I hire as a professional, as a licensed clinical professional counselor in Maryland and a board approved supervisor in Maryland? It just makes good sense for me to target those individuals that are in my profession, I would say in my culture, because I know that I can provide them with the supervision necessary. So if I get them in their practicum and internship phase, I get to work with them for, you know, a year, and then hopefully they want to stay on board, and that gives me 2 additional years with them. And that's the intentionality of my growth. And the other reason for specifically targeting interns is because I understand the process and I know how many hours, direct hours they need to get. And it allows me to build intentionally as opposed to just trying to get clients through the door for them, right? So even being intentional in that space. Another thing that you want to do is you want to think about having a business maturity date. What is a business maturity date? A business maturity date is the date in which your business is no longer dependent upon you. And you can set this as a goal. You can set this as a goal. My goal for my business to be mature and running on its own is 3 years from my birthday, right? So August 12th is my birthday. 3 years from this year, the time of this recording, we're talking about 2025, right? So from August 12th of 2025, 3 years into the future is when I set my business maturity date. And that, what that means is my business is going to be operating on all cylinders. It's not going to require me to be there. And I give all of the specifics. So having, you know, 5 clinicians, possibly having a physical location. I haven't really decided definitively if I want to do that, because I love having the flexibility for my clinicians to be able to see people without the geographical borders of Maryland, right? So if they live in a certain county, or if, you know, I have to think about those things. But if I am virtual, if my practice is virtual, then anyone living in Maryland can see, you know, see one of my clinicians. So that's a thing that I'm still determining. But 5 clinicians and, you know, bringing in a certain amount of revenue that for me would make sense to keep the business afloat without me. That's another aspect of the maturity, right? You want your business to be able to function and generate a certain revenue without you being there. All right. So as we get ready to land this plane in this first episode, I want you to think about a couple things. I want you to think about the current level that your business is developmentally. Is it in an infancy stage? Is it in an adolescence stage or phase? Is it more mature? Is it trending towards maturity? Okay. If you are like most people, including myself, your business is not quite mature. And remember, this is not about how many clinicians you have and how many office locations you have. This is really about, can your business stand you not being involved in the day-to-day activities and still run and function, right? So if that doesn't describe your business, and you say, okay, it's in the infancy or the adolescence phase. Where would you like to take your business? If you're in the infancy phase, perhaps the next step would be, let's get it to the adolescence phase. If your business is at the adolescence phase, then maybe it's time to think about moving it that next step and getting it to be mature. And then I want you to think about and write this down. What is your business maturity date? Okay. And with that business maturity date, you want to include how much revenue is going to be coming in without you being the contributor, how many clinicians you will have. Will you have a physical location or will you be completely virtual? And then think about all of the other elements that goes into your practice. Okay. So those are the steps. All right, I'm going to sum this up again really quickly just to cover. We want a mature business. If we want a mature business, then it becomes important for us to get outside of the revenue trap. Just because you have a caseload of clients does not mean that you have freedom. Okay. So more clients on your caseload does not equal more freedom. It means more clients on your caseload. And then we want to move from having that revenue growth mindset or the revenue driven business to really having a vision driven business. Okay. What does that look like? Is your growth reactionary? Meaning, people just kind of sought you out and you didn't really think about what your focus was and what type of clinicians you were going to bring on board. Is it more intentional? Right? And you intentionally said, I want to have a robust multidisciplinary practice, whatever the case may be. And then you want to decide what your business maturity date is. That's the point at which your business is fired on all cylinders. You are not required to be involved in the day-to-day activities. And essentially, you could sell your business, but you don't want to. All right. So take those steps. Come back next week when we'll be talking about the how to prioritize the important over the urgent. All right. We're going to stop putting out fires. We want to begin to move towards having that freedom, creating that practice that serves you and that you are not serving it, that is giving life to you and not necessarily consuming it. All right. So thank you again for hanging out with me. And see you next time. Thanks to Headway for sponsoring this episode. Again, if you were curious how Headway can work for you, head to join.headway.co/Joe. That's join.headway.co, that is co/Joe. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today on the Grow Group Practice Podcast, and we'll talk to you soon. If you love this podcast, please be sure to rate and review. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guest are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or any other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.